and welcome back to another episode of Tess Talks Entirely Too Much, where I, your host Tess, will talk entirely too much. If you're watching the video, this is Frank. Frank is my emotional support co-host. He is here to make sure that I don't go completely off my rocker. And if you stick around for a little while, you'll probably see that I need someone to make sure that I don't go completely off my rocker. So first and foremost, I want to apologize profusely for the lack of episode this past week. When I tell you that the technological issues were insurmountable. So if you follow me on Instagram or you saw my short that I posted on YouTube, then you know that I had some computer issues, but then the computer issues just kept piling up. So I had the desktop computer that I was using, it was running so slow. And it was making it almost impossible for me to be able to record and edit and get things uploaded and do things at all. If I was just doing audio, it would have been fine. But since I'm doing video, that takes a little bit more processing speed and a little bit more processing power. And my desktop just didn't have that. So I decided to switch over to my laptop because it's a little bit newer and it had a little bit more processing capabilities. But then whenever I went to use my programs on my laptop, nothing worked. My camera wouldn't work. My microphone wouldn't work. Nothing worked. And then whenever I did get it to work, my audio and video were completely out of sync. And it was a mess. In the process of doing all of that, my laptop and my desktop were synced through my Microsoft account. So whenever I deleted stuff off of my laptop to make room to do stuff on my laptop, it automatically deleted everything that was also on my desktop. So I spent 2 or 3 days trying to recover files, couldn't recover anything. And because the files, I was in the process of uploading an episode to YouTube. And because of the fact that the files were deleted, it couldn't upload anything. So whenever I went to play the video on YouTube, it was just a blank. It was an hour of silent black screen. And then whenever the Spotify episode got uploaded, it was just an hour of straight silence. So I ended up losing both the episodes that I recorded. I lost the intro music, which is why we have new intro music now. I personally like this intro music better. I think it fits my personality a little bit better. It's a little bit heavier, and I'm all about the scary, screamy music. So it's more into that genre. So add some more Tess personality to it. It's my show. I do what I want. I have a piece on my wall right there that says I do what I want. So I did upload a video to YouTube showing off my walls. I was going to put that into this episode just to be a little bit more lighthearted, because what we're talking about today is a lot. It's not heavy in the sense of emotionally heavy. It's just a lot to talk about. So I was going to try to give some levity before we got into the heavy stuff. So I do have somewhat of an outline pulled up on my phone. So if you see me looking off to the side, I'm just referencing where I need to go, because talking about what we're talking about today is there's so much to it. And a lot of this stuff didn't happen in chronological order. So I can't just go into it and really, if I try to free talk without some sort of guideline, I am going to the rabbit trail and get off topic and go off course and everything, and then have to loop back around. And I want to make this as clean and clear and cohesive as possible. So I know that's a long ass introduction. I do apologize for that. One last thing, I was able to get well, brand new to me. It's a used, but brand new to me, a gaming PC. It is a beast. It is amazing. And what I have been able to do with it thus far is absolutely blowing my mind. So I am thrilled. It cost a lot more money than what I wanted to spend on a new computer, but it was an investment that I think is going to be worth having. So I'm really, really, really excited. All right. So we are going to jump into this week's topic. And that topic is the ramp in Hamilton, Alabama. There are a lot of people who consider the ramp a cult. I am still struggling with calling it a cult, but I think that's because I was in it. And I don't think that anybody just wants to willingly say, oh, I was in a cult. I'll joke about it and say that I was in a cult. I was in a cult for 9 months, but not in serious. I've never talked about it like this before. So it's, and I also think that I didn't necessarily fall as easily for some of the stuff. Some of the stuff, as soon as I heard what was being said, I was like, the all in, just like, let's go, let's do this. But the other stuff, I was a little more like, I don't know about that. A lot of stuff I didn't do that was required of me to do. So I don't know. I don't know. But I am hoping I can keep this at 2 episodes. I really hope that I can keep this at 2 episodes. We'll just have to see how it goes, because I want to make sure that I cover everything. And I also want to tie in where I'm at in my faith currently and how the ramp has influenced that. And also the church hurt and everything that we talked about in the last episode. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. Now, I will preface this by saying that there are legal things going on with the ramp at the moment. One of their leaders, pastors, he admitted earlier this year to SAing one of the students who was a minor at the time. And so there are investigations going on. There are investigations going on about financial things. There's ties with the ramp to other quote unquote ministries. And that is where it ties into where I'm at in my faith. So there's just a lot. I will touch on some of those things a little bit, but I don't want that to be the main focus of these episodes, because I don't want this to be another true crime kind of podcast. I don't want it to be where we talk about these crazy cases and stuff. What I want to do is I want to talk about my experience at the ramp and what happened to me and the impact that it had on me, and what it was like actually living through and being a part of this so-called ministry and so-called ministry school. So that's where we're going to go. Again, I know that's a long ass introduction. I do apologize, but thank you for sticking with me. We all know that I talk entirely too much, hence the name of the show, right? So we are going to start off with why I even applied to the Ramp School of Ministry. Now it's called Ramp University, but at the time it was the Ramp School of Ministry. So I think I touched in the last episode about where I was in my life. I was in my early 20s 20, 21, 22. And I was still just really trying to figure out who I was. I had been an emo kid. I was trying to figure out who was Tess as an adult. How do I incorporate being this emo kid into adulthood? And I felt like I had to change myself completely to be an acceptable adult in society, right? So I was just trying to really figure out who is Tess? What is my purpose in life? What is my calling in life? Because if you grew up in the church, especially Pentecostal Church of God settings, your calling is such a big thing. Are you called to ministry? Are you called to work in business? Are you called to work in finance? Are you called to work in the medical field? What are you called to do? And that's something that I really struggle with it even still, because I have never found my quote unquote calling. It's never everything that I've thought was, yes, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. I know it in my heart of hearts. This is exactly what I'm supposed to do. I thought for years I was supposed to be a therapist. I thought for years I was supposed to be an author. I thought for years I was supposed to be a meteorologist. I thought for years I was supposed to be a youth pastor. I thought for years I was supposed to do all of these different things, and then none of it panned out. So what is my calling? And then at one point I was told that your calling isn't what your job is, it's what you do in the church. And so whenever I was finally on the worship team, I was like, oh, this is my calling. And then all the stuff happened with the worship team. And it's like, oh, so maybe that wasn't my calling after all. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know what my calling is. Right now, I'm trying to get into the medical field. So that's something I never thought that I would do. I had never been interested in medicine whatsoever at all. I don't want to be a doctor. That's too much schooling for me. I applaud, round of applause to all the doctors, but I'm 34. I don't want like 10 years of schooling plus residency plus all of the other things that you have to do. And then you have a shit ton of medical debt or student loan debt for medical school and this, that, and the other. And it's like, I don't have time for that. I just don't have time for that. I'm kind of sort of interested in doing x-ray tech stuff. I like seeing bones. Obviously, if you look at my walls, you see all the skeletons and stuff. And so it's like bones are pretty cool. And I could learn how to take pictures of people's bones and see if they're broken or whatever, the other people's body parts and everything. Like that would be interesting, I think. So I don't know. I don't know where life is going to take me. Right now, I'm trying to get into CNA classes, and I want to work in a hospital, and I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to be the person for someone else that I needed whenever I was in the hospital. I needed someone there to advocate for me, to hold my hand, to help me through my panic, to help me through my fear. And it's like, I just have this mental image of me being the person that they paged. Tess, come to this room. Someone's having a major panic attack, and we know that you can calm them down. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to say, hey, I deal with this too. I have panic attacks too. Can we try some breath work? Do you want to be touched? Because sometimes being touched, it can help or it can hurt. And I've had people rub my back and stuff and put a hand on my shoulder and everything. And it made it so much worse when if they would have just not touched me, I would have been okay. I want to be able to say, music really helps me. What's your favorite song? I will pull it up and I will play it right now. Let's figure this out. What can I do to help you through this so that you're not alone? I will hold your hand. I will sit here with you. I will breathe with you. I will do whatever it is that you need me to do to help you through this terrifying moment. And that's the person that I want to be, because that's what I needed. And I want to be able to be that person for somebody else. So that's where my heart is at. I don't know if that makes it my calling. I have no idea, because what even is a calling? I don't know anymore. Honestly, I have no freaking clue what a calling is even supposed to be. But I digress. So back to the point. I was just trying to figure out who I was. And in the church that I had been attending, there wasn't just a lot of young adults. The young adults that were there already had their life put together a little bit. And I was still this emo kid and just didn't really fit in. I was too old to be in the youth group, but too young to be in the adult classes and everything. So there just wasn't really a place for me. And then it was spring of 2014. The church went to a ramp conference, and they were doing what was called college days. And you could go and spend a day in the classes and everything, and then apply to the school without having to pay the application fee and all that kind of stuff. We didn't go to the classes, but we went to the conference that started that Friday night. So went, and they started talking about the school, and I had known several people who had gone to the school, and all but one of them had amazing experiences there. Their lives were completely changed. They absolutely loved it. And I thought that the one person who had a bad experience, I honestly just thought that they were insane, because how could you not have a life-changing experience at this place? I had been to the conferences before, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. They had one service on Friday night to kick off the conference weekend. Then there were 3 services on Saturdays. And the first service was worship, and somebody would preach. The second service was their dance team called Chosen, and they would perform. And that was always my favorite. I loved watching their dance team. I loved it so much. I wanted to be a part of their dance team so bad. It was a dream of mine to be able to be part of Chosen, and to be able to dance and move and do these skits and plays and all that kind of stuff. I loved it. I loved it. But again, I grew up watching plays and musical theater and everything. So that was just really appealing to me, was to be able to do stuff like that. And then the third service on Saturday was more like worship and preaching and everything. So in the second service, the Chosen service, they would do a couple of dances, and then they would talk about the school. And I just knew, hearing Karen Wheaton, who is the founder of the ramp, I just knew that this is where I needed to be. Because the way that she talked about it, the way that she talked about finding your place and finding your people and finding your calling and doing all of these things and launching you into the path that God has for you. And they like, the school sets you up for success in ministry and in life, and you get to do all of these things. And at the same time, I was kind of in this heartbroken place, because I had been convinced for a couple of years at this point that I was supposed to go to London, England, just move to London, England, and do ministry in London. And that was my driving force for years. I was going to go to England. I was going to marry somebody British. I was going to be like a youth pastor kind of person. I was going to have a youth center where the youth of London could come and be part of this youth center and learn all about Jesus and experience the love of Jesus. And I even picked out a name. It was going to be called Free Flood because it always England is rainy a lot. So it's like free flood where the love of God falls as freely as the rain. And I had it all picked out. I had everything planned out. I even knew that I was going to buy my plane ticket to leave on March 23rd, 2014 because that didn't work out. I'm still in the United States. And after that is when after that date when I was like, okay, like I gotta figure out, since all the plans have fallen through, I've got to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life. And it just made sense. It just made sense. The ramp just made sense. And it was like, it was obvious to me at that conference. My sister and then another woman from the church who my sister and I were very, very close to at the time, they both just came up to me, not knowing that I was thinking about doing this, not knowing that these thoughts were going on in my mind. They both came up to me at one point during that service and said, you're going to go to the Ramp School of Ministry. Like something like, I don't know, you're going to go there. And it was like, that confirmation from the more charismatic upbringing that I had. The confirmation was like, you asked confirmation and he gave it to you or he didn't. And if he gave it to you, then you knew that, or if something happened that was in alignment with what you wanted, then you took that as confirmation. So I took them saying, you're gonna do this. Like you're absolutely do this. You're gonna be here. I took that as confirmation. And so I applied that weekend and I waited. I went home and I waited. I believe that was in March. And then in May, I got my acceptance letter. And then move-in day was in August. So between these time periods, I was working part-time at Dollar General. I was trying to save money. I really needed a car. I mean, at that time, I didn't even have my driver's license. Yes, I was like 22 years old. I didn't have my driver's license. That's a long story. Overprotective mother, type 1 diabetic. In her mind, driving and diabetes was a no-go. So the only way I was going to get my driver's license was when I moved out of the house. So, and that's pretty much how it happened. Like I was moving out of state and I needed my driver's license, but still didn't have a car. So I was trying to raise money for housing costs and tuition and also trying to save up for a car. I didn't get enough money for any of them, but that's beside the point. So I just spent like that entire summer trying to get ready to get the things that I needed to make sure that everything was all set up and good and, ready whenever move-in day happened. So at first it was my plan to just transfer from the Dollar General that I was working at to the one in Hamilton, but they wouldn't let me transfer because I was going to be a student at the ramp and they wouldn't hire anyone from the ramp. Side note, a lot of places in Hamilton would not hire people from the ramp because of their limited availability. So it was really, really difficult to get a job in the city of Hamilton. Really, the only place that you could get a job was in the next big town, which was Tupelo, Mississippi. And that was about 45 minutes to an hour to the west of Hamilton. And if you were like me and you didn't have a car, wasn't really an option because you weren't guaranteed to get put on the same shift as somebody who did work over there. So, like, getting a ride and everything wasn't, I mean, and even you just needed a ride around town. Like, nobody would give you a ride unless if you gave them, like $10, take you half a mile to Walmart. Like, I walked to more times than I got a ride from someone, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. So something that I really did want to talk about was like it truly was a miracle. It was a miracle. On move-in, I had to have X amount of dollars for tuition, X amount of dollars for housing, and then X amount of dollars for something else. I don't remember what all it was, but the total was, like 700. And I had started a GoFundMe and I had raised about $350 in the GoFundMe. And my best friend, unbeknownst to me, had been putting back a little bit of cash every week from her paychecks to give to me on move-in day. It was on a Tuesday. And my sister was working at the church as the church secretary. And she had to be at the church before I was going to be leaving that day. So she wanted me to come by the church to say goodbye. But then the pastor and, associate pastor and everything, they wanted to pray over me before I left. And so we stopped by the church and, went inside, and like while everyone was for me, the pastor like excused himself and went to his office. And he came back a few minutes later and he handed me a check. And I didn't open it. I didn't look at it. I didn't think anything of it. I just very much, however much was on it was going to be appreciated. So we get back into the car and I open up the check, and the check was for $500. And I just immediately started crying. I was like, because I was not going to have enough money. I was not going to have enough money. And I did not know if the school was going to let me like move in and come to school without the money. So with the GoFundMe money and the money from my friend and this $500 from my pastor, I had enough money to pay all of my deposits and buy my books and housing and everything. And I think I had $14 left over. So I was over the moon, thrilled, cried the entire way to Hamilton. And to me, that was even more confirmation. This is where I'm meant to be. This is the launch pad that is going to get me where I need to go, which I still believed at the time was England. So keep that in mind. So something that was a really, really big deal to me was I had always been the type of person that wanted to stand out. I didn't want to just be part of the crowd ever. I've never been the popular kid. I've never been the person with a whole bunch of friends. I've never been just this well-known person. And whenever people did know me, they knew me as my brother's little sister or my little sister's big sister. They didn't know me as me. They knew me associated with my siblings. So I had this longing to want to be seen and want to be essentially like kicked out from the crowd. Just somebody looks at me and says, there's something about you. You're different. You're special. And I thought that I was going to get that at the ramp. And now thinking back on it, technically that did happen at one point in my life. Whenever I was 5, my family went to Disney World and they did, I don't know if they still do this or not, but at that point in time, they did this thing called the Parade of Nations, and it was just this whole amazing thing. Well, Peter Pan was walking along in the parade, and we were where we were standing. There were people in front of us, and those people were like right on the sidewalk, right on the little barricade thing to keep people out of the streets. But the characters could still come in and out through the barricades and everything. And Peter Pan was walking by, and I loved Peter Pan growing up. I absolutely loved Peter Pan. I always got told that I had the attitude of Tinkerbell. And that's why there's a goth Tinkerbell somewhere on my walls. I don't know where she's at now. She may be up a little bit. I don't remember. Right there. That's my goth Tinkerbell. Anyways, now I got to fix this. But Peter Pan freaking comes walking past the barricade, past this family that was directly in front of us, and comes straight up to me. Out of all of the kids around, he comes straight up to me and shakes my hand. And it was movie worthy. It was amazing. And I will never, ever, ever forget that. And it's like he didn't turn around and shake anybody else's hand in that section. He picked me. So Peter Pan saw me. That says something. That says something. Peter Pan saw me. I can be invisible to everybody else, but Peter Pan saw me. I didn't want spotlight. I didn't want just this massive amount of attention or anything like that. But I wanted to be seen as Tess. I wanted to be known for being Tess. I wanted someone to see that there was something in me that was worth not investing in, but that there was something different about me, that there was something special about me, that there was something, because I'd always felt like that. I always felt like I'm different. I'm special in a way, not in a cocky kind of way. I'm so special, I deserve blah, 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 blah. But he's special because I'm not like everybody else, if that makes sense. And it was a very big letdown to realize that nobody at the ramp pays attention to you. Nobody pays attention to you unless if you're doing something wrong. Nobody pays attention to you at all. So I was not seen. So the housing situation, my goal was that I was going to transfer to the Dollar General down there, and then I was going to get my own apartment and live on my own. That's what I wanted to do. But because I wasn't able to transfer jobs, I wasn't going to have the money to have my own apartment, and it was cheaper to go with the ramp housing and have housemates and stuff than it was to have monthly rent at an actual apartment complex. So I had emailed a student, I don't even know what she was called, but I had emailed her and told her this was my plan, but that's not going to work out. Is it too late for me to get on the housing list? And she said there was one more spot open for the group of females that was going to be moving into the very first dormitory that the ramp had for females. And I was like, awesome. And she said, it's right in downtown Hamilton. It's right above this coffee shop. You've got these restaurants all around. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get to live above a coffee shop. That's like dream come true. Literally, I had always dreamed. Where I live, we have this historic, they say it's historic now. They've modernized it and it's lost its historic charm. And they tore down the gazebo recently. Nobody even knew that they were tearing down the gazebo. That gazebo has been there beyond my lifetime. And now it's just gone. That's messed up. That's really messed up. I don't handle change very well. I really don't, unless if I'm the one making the changes. And so now that this beautiful gazebo on our town square is gone, I don't want anything to do with the square. That's my favorite part of the square. Anyways, I had always dreamed about owning a coffee shop on the square and living upstairs above the coffee shop. And like a Gilmore Girls kind of thing where Luke's diner, he lived in an apartment above the diner and would just come downstairs to go to work and everything. That's what I wanted. I just wanted it to be a coffee shop kind of place. But I was like, oh my goodness, I could get a job at this coffee shop and I could work at the coffee shop and it would just be perfect because I live right upstairs and then I could come down and go to work and it's just going to be great. It's going to be so perfect. So that was awesome. I was so thrilled about that. Come to find out, and I can't remember exactly when we found this out, but at some point before move-in day, we discovered that the dorm building was not finished yet. Mind you, they had been working on this for months. They knew when the students were going to be moving in, and they still didn't have anything ready. And so they put us in this other house. In this other house, let me tell you, this house should have been condemned. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. All right. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a den. And it smelled like something had died in the air ducts. They had to have dehumidifiers running 24/7 or else mold would grow. It was infested with wolf spiders. Don't like spiders, but just so many spiders. Mind you, there were 14 females that moved into this 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. So the way that it ended up working out was they had bunk beds. They had one set of bunk beds in each of the actual bedrooms, so 2 girls per bedroom. And then in the den, they had 5 bunk beds, and 10 of us were all in this single den room. Now, I don't know how much you know about the average female, but females tend to have a lot of clothes and a lot of shoes and a lot of stuff and a lot of makeup and a lot of hair products and a lot of bedding and pillows, and that's just normal everyday stuff. If you go in my bathroom right now, because I put my makeup on, my bathroom is covered in makeup and dry shampoo and hairspray and heat protectant, and my hair straightener is still sitting on the counter, and toothpaste and toothbrushes and dental floss and hair bows and hair ties and hair clips, and my pajamas that I was wearing, they're on the bathroom floor at the moment. My bathroom's a disaster. I'm gonna have to go in there and clean it up later, and I will. I will clean it up later. But whenever you have 10 females in the same room with only 2 bathrooms, it is chaos. And I don't mean chaos in the way that I bring chaos to the table, right? I bring chaos by setting the kitchen on fire trying to boil water to cook noodles. This was the chaotic that made me on move-in day almost. I was almost ready at that point to say, nope, F this, I'm out. But I didn't. I wish I would have, but I didn't. It also didn't help that the girl, all right, so these bunk beds were also, they were not like your average bunk beds. These were freaking 6 foot, 7 foot tall bunk beds. All right, I am 5'2" on a good day. If I'm wearing shoes, I might be 5'2.25" inch. Unless if I'm wearing my platforms, then I'm like 5'4", but whatever. So I'm a short little person. So they put me on the top bunk and I literally had to climb because this little ladder that they had on there, it wasn't enough. You had to actually climb into these beds. And I also am not a huge fan of heights. I'm not scared of heights. I just don't like heights. And also being on the top bunk meant that you didn't have bedside table or anything like that. And so I couldn't keep my phone on the bedside table. I couldn't do anything like that. But the girl who was in the bunk below me, she and I did not mesh at all whatsoever. I could not stand her and she could not stand me. I couldn't stand the majority of the people in my house. And if you're the people in my house and you're watching this, I am sorry, but you didn't like me either. If you did, we would have been friends and we weren't. So sorry, not sorry. I tried to be nice to you. You were always a bunch of bitches. Just saying. Especially one, especially one. I'm not dropping names, but you were like, you were the worst, the absolute worst. And I wish you the best. I hope that you're not a bitch anymore. I don't foresee that because you were so cocky, but you know what? More power to you, babe. More power to you. I did end up making really, 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 really good friends. She is my long distance BFF. Shout out to you, Victoria. I love you and I miss you. I wish that we could see each other, but life. She's I think 3 years younger than me. I think her and my sister are the same age, so 4 years younger than me. We were both in the same major. So once we figured out that we were in the same major, we got to talking a little bit more. And then through that, we discovered that we both really loved Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And we really bonded over that and nerdiness of it all and everything. And once we became close, we sat beside each other in every single class. We went pretty much everywhere together. We hung out all the time. She was like, she was my very best friend. And then one of the other girls I became really good friends with, and she was just a total sweetheart. I absolutely love her. I still love her to this day. And then a couple of the other girls I got along with, but then as time went on, we just drifted apart after school was over for the year and everything. And I don't really talk to them anymore. So, and then the people outside of my house, with the exception of 3 people, again, the guys were just a bunch of dicks for the most part. And all of the females were just like super bitchy. Why were they even in ministry school? They acted like because they got into the ramp, they were something hot. You're not all that. You are not special. What makes you any more special or any more deserving to be here than me if we both got in? Mostly it was the first year class that was like that. The second year class, they were a little bit nicer. But there were 3 other students in the first year class who were actually really, really nice to me. And I would love to tell you about them, but it's their lives, it's their stories, and it's not my place to share. So I'm not going to do that. But we lived in that house from August until I believe it was the week before Thanksgiving. And then we were finally able to move into the dorms. So what was supposed to be a couple of weeks living in this house turned into a couple of months. And then whenever we finally moved into the dorms, things in the house got a lot better and everyone seemed to get along a lot better because we all had more of our own space. But there were still 4 of us in a room, but that was a heck of a lot easier and a heck of a lot better than there being 10 of us in a single room. And I remember the first time that I went home for like a weekend, I locked myself in my bedroom, and I think that I spent the majority of the weekend just by myself in my bedroom because I was finally getting alone time. There was no alone time. Even whenever we moved into the dorms, there was no alone time at all. It was just insanity all the way around, all the time. There was just there was nowhere for you to go to be by yourself. In your rooms, you had your roommates in your rooms. If you went into the main living area, there was always somebody watching TV in the main living area, or someone doing something in the little kitchenette, or people doing homework in the loft area upstairs. Even in the shower, there were 4 shower stalls. You couldn't go and take a shower without somebody else being in the bathroom also taking a shower. You couldn't go pee without somebody else being in the bathroom using the bathroom. And it's like there was no alone time at all. Now, if you had a car, then you could go and escape it. But if you were like me and several of the other girls, you weren't able to do that. You couldn't just go drive around and listen to your music, or go somewhere and sit and do your homework and quiet. You just couldn't do that. So it was just, for someone who is very reclusive and very to themselves, I do not do well whenever I don't have my alone time. I have to have so much time to myself. And I've gotten a lot better. Socializing doesn't wear me out as much anymore. But used to, if I were to spend a day hanging out with friends, by the time I got home and was ready to go to bed, I could sleep for 12 or 14 hours because it exhausted me that much just to be around people. Used to, going to Walmart was so overwhelming and so overstimulating just because of all of the people. I would have panic attacks. I would have actual panic attacks going to Walmart. So my social anxiety has gotten a whole lot better over the last probably 6 or 8 months. And I'm really, really proud of that. I'm really, really proud of that. But it just living with all of these people it was crazy. It was just crazy. So now I'm going to talk about like classes and the church services and the schedules and why working was so difficult, because there was a lot. So our classes were Monday through Thursday from 8 o'clock to noon. So that's not terrible. And then I think on Mondays, we had an extra class. It was Mondays or Wednesdays. We had an extra class at noon. I would usually skip that one because it was always a guest speaker and they didn't take attendance for it. So I always just went home. But from 8 to 9, you had morning prayer. That was mandatory. You had to be there. Of course, you had to be there for your classes. So your mornings were taken up. You could work in the afternoons. But what made it so difficult was that you also had to have so many hours of volunteer work every single week. I think that whenever I was there, it was only 8 or 10 hours. But I recently found out that that number has been jumped up to 30 hours. And I don't recall needing 30 hours of volunteer time. But if you weren't volunteering enough, you got in trouble for it. I got in trouble for it because I never volunteered. Not because I didn't want to, but because I have said I did not have a car, and people would not just offer to give you a ride somewhere, even if you were going to the same place. And if they did, they expected you to give them gas money. And I get that. If you were to ask someone, hey, can you take me to this place, and this place, because I need to go to these 3 different places? And they were like, would you mind sparing gas money, especially if they didn't have a job or they could only work limited hours or whatever? I understand that. But if you are like, if you're in the same house, there's a rule in our house that if you rode with somebody, you had to give them gas money. Even if you were just going to the school, they're going to be going to the school anyways. They're going to be using the gas money anyways. Why do I have to give you gas money if we're going to the same place? I would never ask someone for gas money if we were going to the same place. Or if you're on my way, if I'm picking you up and you're on my way to wherever I'm going and we're going to the same place, I'm not going to ask you for gas money. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. Anyways, so you had to volunteer so many hours, and they had different types of ways that you could volunteer. You could volunteer at the church, you could work in the ramp office, you could go out into the community and help people. And they had like days where they would do that. They would have like a whole group of people who would go and do that. You could volunteer with the local high school to tutor kids and everything. And it was just, there were a lot of different ways. But at the same time, a lot of these ways were by deep cleaning the church, deep cleaning the ramp offices. Some of our volunteer hours as the people who were moving into the dorms were to go and work in the dorms before they were finished. And there were a couple of times that we were in there, we had no business being in there. And if we were going to be in there, we needed steel toe boots and hard hats. But no, most of us were walking around in flip flops and nothing to protect our heads with or anything like that. So it was like, what the hell? What the hell are they thinking, sending these kids, these young adults, into this construction zone without proper protection? So it was just, oh my goodness, so stupid. You also had, it was mandatory that you attend all the church services. And I don't think that Sundays were optional. I think that you had to be there on Sundays. Wednesday nights, you could be excused if you had to work. You had to have your employer fill out a form saying that you were working. And if you didn't do that, then you would get counted as absent. And then if you missed so many services, you were dismissed from the school. So the limitations to the hours that you could actually work, if you could even find a job, it was insane. It was ridiculous. And because so many people couldn't they couldn't get a job, they weren't able to pay their bills, they weren't able to buy food, they weren't able to provide for themselves. And the amount of stories that I have heard, and thankfully I didn't experience this because I was able to, and I took advantage of the fact that I was able to get on food stamps while I was down there. So I was able to get groceries and buy food. But a lot of the times I would buy, whenever I was still living in the dorms, I would buy food for myself, but then I would also get stuff for some of my roommates so that they wouldn't be hungry. I was more than happy to help them when I knew that they needed something. And then if I had food and I knew that one of my housemates was hungry, I would offer them, hey, I've got this. If you're hungry, just let me know that it's you that took it. I would always try to share what I had. And then whenever I moved out of the dorm and into my own apartment finally, I invited some of my previous housemates over to have food and coffee and all that kind of stuff. I think they only came over once, but it's like I wanted to make sure that they were fed and everything. But I've heard so many stories about kids going hungry and not being able to buy food because they couldn't get a job, and because of the new 30-hour volunteer requirements and everything. And anytime they would say something to someone about them not having any food, they're being told, well, this is a time of fasting. This is a good time for fasting. And they're really, really, really big on fasting at the ramp. And again, as a diabetic, fasting food, not really the smartest thing for me. Can I do it? Yeah. Should I do it? No, probably not. So in the times in my life where I have fasted sodas or, I think one time I tried to fast coffee and that did not end well for anybody involved. Most of the time I try to fast social media if I'm going to fast, but I really lack self-control when it comes to social media. The algorithm being addictive, it's worked for me. I am addicted. I am on Instagram pretty much 24/7. I don't know what my runtime is or my screen time is on Instagram every day, but I would probably be embarrassed to say it out loud. I'm thankful that it's Instagram that I'm on and not like TikTok or something. I have TikTok, but I don't really use it. So I'm really, I'm a really big Instagram person. I also have Facebook, but everything that I post on Facebook comes from my Instagram. So it's like, it doesn't really count. I don't think. I don't know. I don't know. But so if you're on Instagram, follow me on Instagram and shoot me a message to let me know that you followed from the podcast so I can follow you back. Because I'm getting a lot of people following me, but I don't know if they're coming from seeing or hearing this. And I don't just want to follow back a whole bunch of random people. I don't want to give them the wrong idea. As a female, when you follow someone on Instagram, people probably, guys always think, oh, she followed me back. I'm going to get in her DMs. Just like, if you are a guy and you follow me, you let me know that you followed me from the podcast. You can do that. That's fine. But other than that, please stay out of my DMs, right? Sorry, not sorry. But these students were being told that this was a time of fasting. It wasn't like they were like, oh, let's see what we can do to help you out. And they had, whenever I was there, people in Ramp Church owned and operated a restaurant that was right outside of the dorm building. Walked out the door, and it was the second door down from the dorm door. So you would think that if you had a restaurant that was owned and operated by people in the church, that as the school, you could make some sort of deal with those people and with that restaurant for a meal plan, right? Even if it was like limited, even if it wasn't, you could come in and order anything off the menu, even if it was like a limited option kind of thing, like you would think that you could have some sort of meal plan so that the students don't go hungry. Every other college that has a cafeteria offers a meal plan. And even colleges that don't have cafeterias, they at least have vending machines and snack machines and drink machines and stuff like that so that you can get food. Of course, if you're dead ass broke and you can't afford to buy food, then you couldn't afford to get stuff out of the vending machines. But I don't know. It blows my mind that kids are going hungry at the ramp and that the church and the school aren't helping. Now, whenever I first got there, I wasn't on food stamps yet. And I had ran out of my food supply, or I was running out of my food supply. And my best friend had brought me food. She had given me a huge box of food on move-in day. And then she had brought me a few things a couple of times whenever she came down to visit. My mom would bring food down, or we would do a little bit of grocery shopping whenever I would come home and everything. But at one point, I had run out of pretty much all of my food. I just had a few a few things left. And somebody in the church that I didn't know, still don't know who it was, but somebody in the church actually put together a box of food specifically for me. I don't know how they knew it was me, but it had my name on it. And then one of the other girls in my house. It was just packed full of food. It was ramen noodles and a couple of boxes of couscous, which was really good. I remember really liking it. Oatmeal and rice and beans and things like that. Stuff that you would probably get at the food pantry or something. But it's like I had food and this person gave me food. And that was the only time that anybody helped me get food. And I know that one of my housemates, she was in a very similar situation. She didn't have a car. She couldn't get a job. And she wasn't from a well-to-do family. Her parents couldn't send her a couple $100s every week to buy groceries, just like my family couldn't do that. And so she would go hungry a lot. And she's one of the people that I would always try to share my food with because I didn't want her to go hungry because she couldn't help it, but nobody would help. Nobody would help. And then whenever they would host meals at the school or at the church, you had to pay for it. And I specifically remember for Thanksgiving that year, they were doing a school Thanksgiving dinner, but you had to pay 10 or 12, $15 in order to participate and come and eat. And I remember one of the second year students asking me if I was going to come. And I was like, yeah, I would, but I can't pay. I just don't have the money. And she was like, I'll cover for you. I got you covered. Just be here. And it's like, that's the only reason that I was able to go to this Thanksgiving dinner that the school was hosting. And I was able to eat this Thanksgiving meal because a second year student offered to pay for me. And it's like, why did we have to pay for it in the first place if the school is hosting it? Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Please make that make sense. But then that goes into so much of their financial stuff. And I'm going to talk about the financial stuff in the next episode. But I think that I have one more little thing. And then that will be the end of part 1. And then I will go into part 2, where we will talk about the finances and everything and the money and some of the shady, more culty stuff that went on. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the rules, some of the rules. I wish that I still had my student handbook. Oh my goodness. I had found some of the paperwork and everything whenever I was doing my blind crime podcast. So if you want to know more about a little bit more in depth of what application process is, what the paperwork is, the financial agreements and all that kind of stuff, go listen to my last couple of episodes of Blind Crime because I went into everything. I spent an entire episode just reading documents, and I don't have those documents anymore. Because once I did that, I'm pretty sure that I deleted them out of my email. And then with all this computer stuff, I lost everything on my computers. Everything. I had nothing. Everything that I had saved, all of my previous blind crime stuff, gone. Absolutely gone. It is nowhere. It is vanished. But I've got this new computer. I've got plenty of room for storage. I have a backup external hard drive. Everything's going to be saved multiple times. Everything's going to be uploaded to the cloud. I'm not going to have to lose anything. But some of the rules that really stood out to me, if you were in a relationship prior to applying and you got accepted and you decided to attend the school, you either had to break up with or get engaged to the person you were dating before classes started. Yes, you heard that correctly. You had to either break up or get engaged, because first year students were not allowed to date. Now tell me, just explain this to me. Somebody out there explain this to me, because I don't get it. How stupid, how unbelievably stupid is it to tell? Because most of these students were high school graduates just coming out of high school. There were some who were in their 20s. I was, and I hadn't dated anybody in years. I was holding out for Mr. British, so I wasn't dating anybody, so it didn't apply to me. But how stupid is it to tell a 17, 18-year-old kid who is probably over the moon in love with their significant other, because high school puppy love, right? To either break up or get engaged. 9 times out of 10, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to get engaged because they think that this love is forever, right? High school sweethearts, all that crap. But then what happens? You get engaged. You can't get married during your first year. You have to wait until 3 or 6 months after first year before you can even get married, if you're going to come back for second year at least. So you get married, and then what? 5, 6, 7, 10 years down the road, you realize, oh my God, I only married you because they told me that we had to get engaged, and I thought that was the right thing to do, and you're not the right person for me. That is so messed up. That is absolutely so messed up. It is insane. I can understand the no dating thing, right? I can get that, because they wanted your focus to be solely on school, solely on God, all that kind of stuff, right? And in the young mind, relationships are distracting. Relationships are distracting no matter how old you are, but especially whenever you're younger, because it's all consuming, right? The puppy love, the heart flutters, the butterflies, all of that. But it also sets up this like dynamic of, you can't date during the first year. So by the time your first year is over, you literally have people who, the day after first year graduation, they are like getting engaged to these other first year students. And I know 3 or 4 people in my first year class who started dating literally the day, as soon as the graduation ceremony was over, their relationship status changed on Facebook. And it is like, what? I'm sorry, what? So even though they weren't dating, officially dating, that these kids were talking and probably sneaking around to see each other and all that kind of stuff. But because it wasn't Facebook official, nobody got in trouble for it. So it's like, and then you can't spend time with the opposite sex alone. And again, I understand that. I do understand that, because when you are in a ministry school, you don't want guys and girls hanging out alone together and one thing leading to another and pants coming off and all that kind of stuff, right? I get that. Okay. And I respect that. But even if you're hanging out in a group and you're with somebody who you are interested in, you're not going to be able to really get to know them, because it's not like you can go on dates. It's not like you can take them out or anything like that. Even if you're in public, you can't be alone together. You still have to have at least 1 or 2 other people with you. So it's like, you don't really know who you're getting involved with. So on the outside, they may seem great. They may seem like an awesome Jesus loving person who's going to treat you right and be the best thing that ever happened to you and this, that, and the other. But then you get to know each other after you're actually able to start dating. And it's like, ew, no, thank you. I'm good. I'm good. While I was there, there were two people. There were two people who I was somewhat interested in while I was there. And thank God, I was too paranoid about breaking the rules to even attempt to get to know any other of them. And then I was out of Hamilton before graduation was on May 1st, I think, of that year. And I was back in my hometown like the first week of June. So I wasn't there long enough afterwards to actually get to know any of the people who actually stuck around. So, like, the grace of God, I didn't end up marrying somebody that would have been like marrying because I was at the ramp. And of course, if I met my person at the ramp, it was my person. Well, several people in my first year class ended up getting married to people that were there, and still happy together, and like that's wonderful. I know several people who got married while they were there and their relationships did not work out. And I'm sorry for that, but I've been able to see some of these amazing glow ups with particularly these women. And it's like, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for the fact that you're able to get out of that and you've managed to turn your life around and become exactly who you were meant to be, because you deserve it. So, yeah. Dating, no being alone with the opposite sex. Were certain places that you weren't like allowed to work at unless if it was like your last option. So like the call center there. And I did end up working at the call center for a couple of weeks, but it was too much dying because I was working while I was in school from 8 to 12, then work from 1 to 11, then having to come home and do my homework and assignments before midnight, then only sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night. So doing that for about 6 weeks straight almost killed me. Yeah. Yeah, it almost killed me. I know there's more rules, but like couldn't wear like to class unless if they were wearing like a super long shirt or like a dress or something. Girls were encouraged to come to class like all dressed up and with their hair done and their makeup done and everything. Guys were encouraged to be nice, but they didn't have to wear like or anything. Like we're able to just wear like jeans and whatnot. And like they'd wear t-shirts and stuff. I would wear t-shirts, but I had like funny t-shirts, like the one that had Pluto on it and it says, "It's okay, Pluto, I'm not a planet either." And then I had one Lord of the Rings one that said, "Cool story, Bilbo, tell it again." And those were two of my favorite t-shirts, and I wore them all the time, but I always wore them with like jeans that looked like they like pants than jeans. And I had like the black blazer that I would wear. So it would be like, dressy. That was some of my couple of my go-to outfits for school. I was going to go ahead and go into the teachings that we were exposed to, I guess you could say, but I think I'm going to save that for part 2. I think that would make a lot more sense. So we're going to stop it there. And this next episode, it's going to come out at the same time. So you won't have to wait a week. If there has to be a third episode, for the sake of my voice, I will probably wait until at least later in the week to post it. But if I can get these 2 recorded and edited today, which is July 4th, then I'm going to go ahead and release them today, since there wasn't episodes on Wednesday. And then if there needs to be a third episode on this, then I will drop it on Wednesday Otherwise, Wednesday's episode, it will come out as scheduled, like Wednesdays, new episode days. So it will come out on Wednesday. And I think I'm going to be talking about my goth identity in Wednesday's episode. So I'm really excited about that one. So that's how these few episodes are going to work. I'm not going to give like a outro or anything because we're just going to pick right back up into the story in the next episode. So just go on to the next one or let it autoplay, whatever it is that you have to do. I don't know how double episodes work really because I've never done it before. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.